This story is titled, My Husband Laughed to His Friends and Family. She can't please anyone, so I stopped pleasing him. So I, 34 female, didn't mean to hear it. I swear I wasn't trying to eavesdrop or anything. I was just in the kitchen washing dishes while Kane, 32 male, my husband of 8 years, had his friends and family over. It was a Saturday night, and I'd spent most of the day helping set up for this dinner party he'd been planning for weeks. I grilled the steaks, medium rare, exactly how his dad likes them, helped clean the entire house to his exact specifications, and even put out those stupid decorative hand towels in the bathroom that no one is actually supposed to use. The dinner itself went fine. I sat there, smiled at all the right moments, laughed at his brother-in-law's terrible jokes, and kept everyone's drinks filled, being the perfect wife like always. After dinner, I offered to clean up while they all moved to the living room for dessert and coffee. No one objected. No one even thanked me. It was just expected. I was in the kitchen, up to my elbows in soapy water, half listening to the conversation drifting in from the living room. They were laughing, the kind of laughter that always made me feel like an outsider, even in my own home. Kane's sister, Emma, has this really distinctive laugh, like a hyena that smoked 2 packs a day for 20 years. I could pick it out anywhere. She was laughing the loudest. Then I heard Kane's voice cut through. She can't please anyone anyway. That's what he said. All casual, like it was just a fact everybody already knew. And then they all laughed, like they all agreed with him, even his mom, who I always thought liked me. His mom, who I'd helped move apartments last month, spending an entire weekend carrying heavy furniture up 3 flights of stairs because the elevator was broken. I just stood there gripping the sink, my knuckles turning white, a plate dripping in my hands. I'm not a small woman. I ran track in college and still hit the gym 3 times a week. But in that moment, I felt tiny. I waited for him to say he was joking or to add a just kidding or, but she tries so hard. But he never did. He just moved on to some other topic, like he hadn't just punched me in the gut with his words. I finished washing that plate, dried it carefully, and set it in the cabinet. Then I washed another and another. Methodical, focused. Like if I just concentrated on this simple task, I wouldn't have to think about what I'd just heard. But the words kept echoing in my head. She can't please anyone anyway. The worst part? This wasn't the first time. This was just the first time I actually paid attention. It was like someone had finally adjusted the focus on a camera I'd been looking through for years, and suddenly everything was crystal clear. Every dismissive comment, every eye roll, every sigh of disappointment. It had all been there all along. I just hadn't wanted to see it. Before I get into what happened next, let me give you some background. Kane and I met when I was 26 and he was 24. I was working as a financial advisor at this mid-sized firm, making decent money, but nothing crazy. I wasn't some Wall Street shark, just a regular woman helping regular people figure out their retirement plans. And, I was good at it. I had a way of explaining complicated financial stuff that didn't make people's eyes glaze over. I met Kane at a mutual friend's wedding. He was a groomsman. I was a bridesmaid. Classic setup, right? He was tall, confident, the life of the party. Way out of my league, or so I thought. When he asked me to dance at the reception, I thought my friend must have put him up to it or something. When he gave me his number at the end of the night, I was sure it was a prank. It wasn't. We went out the next weekend. I spent 3 hours getting ready for that first date. 3 hours. For a woman who usually just throws on whatever's clean, that should tell you something. I tried on every decent dress I owned, got my hair blown out the day before, actually Googled the restaurant to make sure I was going somewhere nice enough. The date went well, really well. He made me laugh. He touched my hand a lot. All those signs that he was actually into me. I couldn't believe it. I kept waiting for the catch, for him to reveal he was just doing this on a dare or something. But date 1 turned into date 2, then 3. Then, before I knew it, we were exclusive. Looking back now, there were red flags. On our 4th date, I took him to this Italian place I loved. Family-owned, amazing food, but not fancy. He picked his pasta, then made a comment about how he usually went to the one downtown, the one that cost 3 times as much. When I got him a gift for Valentine's Day, he mentioned his ex always got him something more expensive. Little things. Things I brushed off because, well, he was Kane, and I was just grateful he was with me. We got married 2 years later. I thought I'd hit the jackpot. My parents loved him. My mom especially was thrilled I'd found someone so accomplished and handsome. His parents tolerated me. They never said anything outright negative, but there was always this undercurrent of Kane could have done better. His dad was a successful surgeon. His mom came from old money. I was solidly middle class with student loans and a Honda Civic. After we got married, things moved fast. We bought a house in a neighborhood we couldn't quite afford because Kane insisted it was where we needed to be for his career networking. I worked my ass off to give him the life he wanted. I put in 60-hour weeks to climb the corporate ladder so he could have the kitchen renovation he wanted, the vacations to resorts in Mexico, the designer suits. I'm not saying I didn't enjoy those things too, but most of the time I was doing it for him. I remember this one vacation in Cancun, 5-star resort, ocean view room, the works, cost me nearly a month's salary. I was stressed the whole time about the money, but seeing him happy, actually genuinely happy, made it seem worth it. He spent the entire week posting photos on Instagram, #BlessedHubbyDoesItRight, #LivingMyBestLife. Looking back now, I can see how it started small, a comment here, a look there. The way he'd sigh when I gave him a gift, the way he'd compare me to his friends' wives. Ryan's wife booked them a trip to Paris for their anniversary. Jason's wife just got promoted to VP, always making me feel like I wasn't quite measuring up. And like a idiot, I just tried harder. By year 5 of our marriage, I was exhausted, constantly walking on eggshells, constantly trying to anticipate what would make him happy, what would set him off. We went to therapy briefly, his idea after I forgot our anniversary. I remember sitting in that office, listening to him list all the ways I'd failed him, nodding along like he was right, promising to do better. The therapist, a woman around our age with these huge glasses, asked Kane what he appreciated about me. There was this long pause, uncomfortable long. Finally, Kane said, "She's very reliable, and she's good with money." Like I was a Honda Civic. Reliable, good mileage, nothing special, but gets the job done. We stopped going after 3 sessions. Kane said the therapist was clearly biased because she'd asked him to also work on communication. God forbid anyone suggest that Kane wasn't perfect. By the time that dinner party rolled around, we'd been living separate lives in the same house for months. I worked, went to the gym, came home, watched TV in the basement while he did whatever he did upstairs. We hadn't had sex in I don't even remember how long, months at least. I tried to initiate a few times, but his rejections had gotten more and more brutal, so eventually I just stopped trying. It wasn't a marriage anymore, it was a business arrangement. I provided the lifestyle, he provided, well, I wasn't sure what he provided anymore. The illusion of a perfect life for his Instagram followers, I guess. After everyone left that night, I couldn't sleep. Kane fell asleep almost immediately, like he always did, out like a light at 11:30, regardless of what was going on. I lay there next to him, staring at the ceiling, his words playing on repeat in my head. She can't please anyone anyway. And that's when something inside me finally snapped. The thing is, I'd always thought of myself as pretty easy to please. I didn't need fancy stuff. I was happy with pizza and wine for dinner, watching a game with friends, simple things. But somehow, in Kane's narrative, I had become this impossible-to-please person, someone who could never be satisfied no matter how hard he supposedly tried. And apparently, everyone we knew believed it. I started thinking about all the times he'd made me feel small, all the eye rolls, all the sighs when I didn't do something exactly right, all the sarcastic jokes at my expense. I remembered his birthday last year. I'd planned this whole surprise weekend getaway to Napa. I researched wineries, found this boutique hotel with amazing reviews, even arranged for a private wine tasting tour. When I revealed the surprise, showing him the itinerary I'd worked on for weeks, he just sighed and said, "Couldn't you have booked the resort I showed you instead of this place?" I remembered cooking a steak dinner for him after taking an actual cooking class to get better. He always complained about my cooking. I'd practiced for weeks getting the sear just right, making this complicated red wine reduction sauce. He took one bite, made a face, and pushed the plate away without saying anything. Just ordered takeout like my effort meant nothing. I remembered dressing up in my best suit dress for his company party, the one he'd been stressing about for weeks because his boss would be there. I spent 30 minutes on my hair alone, making sure it was perfect. As we were about to leave, he looked me up and down and said, "That color doesn't really go with your skin tone, but whatever, we're already late." I spent the whole night feeling like everyone was staring at my apparently bad choice in clothing. One memory after another, Just this highlight reel of every time I felt like crap in our marriage. The time he corrected my pronunciation of a wine in front of his friends. The way he'd answer questions directed at me like I couldn't be trusted to speak for myself. How he'd check my work emails before I sent them to make sure they sounded professional. The constant stream of little criticisms, my haircut, my posture, the way I loaded the dishwasher. And yet, I kept trying anyway. I kept telling myself he was just stressed, or that he didn't mean it the way it sounded, or that if I just tried harder, he'd finally look at me the way I always looked at him. But lying there that night, watching him sleep peacefully like nothing had happened, I finally got it. It was never about what I was doing wrong. It was about the fact that nothing I did would ever be good enough for him. I wasn't the problem. I had never been the problem. For the first time in our marriage, I felt angry. Not the flash-in-the-pan frustration I'd felt during arguments, but a deep, simmering rage. I'd given him everything, my time, my energy, my soul, and he'd just taken and taken and taken, all while making me believe I was the selfish one, the difficult one. I got out of bed around 3 o'clock a.m., careful not to wake him. I went downstairs and sat in the dark living room, where, hours earlier, I'd been humiliated without even knowing it. And I drank. And for the first time in a long, long time, I thought about what I wanted. Not what would make Cain happy. Not what would avoid his disappointment. Just what I, Gloria, actually wanted. And what I wanted was out. I woke up the next morning on the couch, my neck stiff. For a second, I was disoriented. Then the events of the previous night came flooding back, and with them a strange sense of clarity. I wasn't hungover. I'd only had the one drink, but something had definitely shifted inside me. I checked my watch. 6:15 a.m. Cain wouldn't be up for hours on a Sunday. He liked to sleep in until at least 9, then spend another hour scrolling on his phone before he'd even consider getting out of bed. I got up, showered, and then went out. I didn't leave a note, didn't text him to say where I was. I just put on my shoes and got the hell out of the house for a few hours. When I got back, Cain was in the kitchen, still in his silk pajamas, hair perfectly tousled like he'd stepped out of a shampoo commercial even though he'd just woken up. He had that look on his face, the one that meant I was in trouble. "Where were you?" he demanded. "I woke up and you were just gone. No note, no text, nothing." Before, I would have apologized immediately. I would have fallen all over myself, explaining, making excuses, promising never to worry him again. But this time, I just grabbed a water bottle from the fridge and drank half of it before answering. "Went out," I said simply. "For over 2 hours?" His voice had that edge to it, the one that usually made me scramble to smooth things over. "Yep." I started making breakfast, deliberately not looking at him, not engaging with his annoyance. "Well, I needed you here," he said. "My parents are coming over later, and I wanted you to help me move the furniture in the living room. I want to try that arrangement I saw in Architectural Digest." This was classic Cain, making plans that involved my labor without bothering to check if I was available or willing, expecting me to drop everything to fulfill his latest whim. Before, I would have rushed to help him right away, maybe even skipped breakfast to make him happy, but this time I just said, "I'll help you after I eat." He looked at me like I'd grown a second head. "But they'll be here in 2 hours." "That's plenty of time," I said, making my breakfast calmly. "Besides, you could have texted me if it was urgent." "I shouldn't have to text my own wife to be where she's supposed to be," he snapped. I finished making my food, then looked directly at him. "And where exactly am I supposed to be, Cain? At your beck and call, 24/7? His eyes widened. In 8 years of marriage, I'd never spoken to him like that. Hell, I'd rarely spoken to anyone like that. I'd always been the peacekeeper, the people pleaser, the woman who'd rather swallow her own feelings than cause conflict. "What is wrong with you?" he asked, his voice quieter now, uncertain. "Nothing's wrong with me," I said. "I'm just tired. I'm going to eat now." After breakfast, I helped Cain move the furniture, but I did it my way, suggesting a different arrangement than what he'd seen in the magazine, one that made more sense for the actual space we had. To my surprise, he didn't fight me on it. He just watched me with this strange expression, like he was seeing me for the first time. His parents came over. I was polite, but not fawning like I usually was, when his dad started in on his usual subtle digs about my career. How's the financial planning business? Still telling people to save for retirement? With that condescending laugh of his, I didn't just smile and take it. "It's going well, James," I said, using his first name instead of sir, like I usually did. Just helped a client navigate a seven-figure inheritance last month. Saved him about $150,000 in taxes with some creative planning. James blinked, clearly not expecting me to actually stand up for myself. Well, he said after a moment, good for you. The rest of the visit was tense but uneventful. When they left, Kane rounded on me. What was that about? He demanded. What was what about? You know what? You were different with my dad. With me, what's going on with you? I considered giving him some excuse. Stress at work, not feeling well. Anything to avoid the real conversation. But I was done avoiding. I heard what you said last night, I told him, at the party. He frowned, genuinely confused. What did I say? She can't please anyone anyway. I quoted his exact words, his exact tone. His expression shifted from confusion to recognition to defensiveness in the span of seconds. That was nothing, just a joke. It didn't sound like a joke, and no one laughed like it was a joke. You're being too sensitive, he said, waving a hand dismissively. It wasn't a big deal. It was to me, I said quietly, and it made me realize something. You don't respect me, Kane. You haven't for a long time, if you ever did. That's ridiculous, he scoffed. Of course I respect you. No, you don't. You criticize everything I do. You put me down in front of your friends and family. You make me feel like I'm never good enough, like I'm always failing somehow. I don't do that, he insisted, but there was a flicker of something in his eyes. Guilt, maybe, or just annoyance at being called out. You do, and I've let you because I've been so desperate for your approval that I've lost myself completely. I ran a hand through my hair, feeling both drained and strangely energized. But I'm done with that now. What is that supposed to mean, he asked, his voice rising slightly. It means I'm done trying to please you. It means I'm going to start living for myself again, not for your approval. He stared at me for a long moment, then his face hardened. Is this some kind of midlife crisis? Are you going to go buy a motorcycle and start wearing leather next? I almost laughed at how predictable his response was. Immediate dismissal, trying to make me feel foolish for standing up for myself. No, Kane, this is me finally seeing our marriage clearly. This is me deciding I deserve better than being your emotional punching bag. You're being dramatic, he said, but I could see a flash of fear in his eyes. He was losing control of the narrative, and he didn't like it one bit. Maybe, I said, but I'm still done. I slept in the guest room that night and the night after that. Kane alternated between icy silence and attempts to pick fights. I didn't engage with either. I was polite but distant, like we were roommates rather than spouses. It was the beginning of the end, though I didn't fully realize it yet. Over the next few weeks, I kept up my new approach. I wasn't trying to be cruel. I wasn't playing games or trying to get back at him. I just stopped bending over backwards for someone who never even tried to meet me halfway. At home, I stopped walking on eggshells. If he made a sarcastic comment, I didn't argue or try to prove him wrong. I just let it hang there until he realized I wasn't going to react. That shirt makes you look like you're trying too hard, he said one morning as I was getting dressed for work. Before, I would have changed immediately. This time, I just looked at him, shrugged, and said, I like it. Then I went downstairs and made my breakfast. I stopped filling the silence when he sighed dramatically, waiting for me to ask what was wrong. I stopped apologizing for stuff that wasn't my fault. I stopped sacrificing my own comfort just to make him comfortable. And that's when he started to really notice. It began with little jabs. You've been acting weird lately. What's gotten into you? You're being a jerk. You know that? I think at first he thought it was temporary, like maybe I was just in a bad mood or going through some phase. But as days turned into weeks, he realized this wasn't temporary. I wasn't the same woman anymore. And that bothered the hell out of him. He tried different tactics. First, he tried to seduce me. After weeks of barely acknowledging my existence physically, suddenly he was walking around shirtless, putting his arm around me in the kitchen, suggesting we take showers together. I wasn't made of stone. Part of me, a significant part, if I'm being honest, wanted to give in. Not just for the physical release, but because it would have been so easy to fall back into our old patterns. Sex, followed by a brief period of what felt like connection, followed by the slow slide back into emotional manipulation and control. But I didn't give in. I was polite but distant. Not tonight became my go-to phrase. Each rejection seemed to shock him more than the last. In his world, my sexuality was a lever to pull, offer it, and I'd cave. Withhold it, and I'd beg. The idea that I could say no, repeatedly, was completely foreign to him. When seduction failed, he tried guilt. He started bringing up my parents, who adored him. Your mom called today, he'd say casually. She asked how we're doing. I didn't know what to tell her. Or, don't you think your dad would be disappointed in how you're acting? This one was harder to resist. My parents had raised me to believe marriage was forever, that working through problems was just what you did. The thought of disappointing them did weigh on me. But then I'd remember the years of subtle humiliation, of feeling like I was never enough, and I'd stay firm. My parents want me to be happy, I'd say. That's all. When guilt didn't work, he tried fear. You know, you'll never find anyone else like me, he said one night, after another failed attempt to get me to open up about what was really going on. God, I hope not, I replied before I could stop myself. His face crumpled, and for a moment I felt terrible, but then his expression hardened. You think you're so much better off without me? Good luck with that. You'll be begging to come back within a month. I don't think I'm better than you, Kane, I said tiredly. I just think I deserve better than this, better than us. So that's it? 8 years of marriage and you're just giving up? I'm not giving up. I'm just finally acknowledging what's been true for a long time. We don't make each other happy. We haven't for years, if we ever did. He had no response to that, because deep down, I think he knew it was true. He started testing me, throwing out little barbs to see if I'd bite. You never do anything right. You'd be lost without me. God, you're impossible. Before, I would have jumped to defend myself. I would have tried so hard to prove him wrong, to convince him I was good enough. But now I just looked at him, let his words sit there, and then moved on like they meant nothing. Because they didn't. Not anymore. The first time I just looked at him and walked away, I saw something flicker across his face. Not anger, not frustration, uncertainty. And that's when I realized he'd always been in control. Not by force or direct commands, but through expectations. He had shaped me over time, worn me down like water on stone, until I was someone who never questioned, never pushed back, never existed outside of what he needed me to be. But that version of Gloria was gone, and he had no idea what to do with the new one. One weekend, about 2 months into this new normal, I decided to visit my sister in Chicago. She'd been asking me to come to see their new house for months, but Kane had always found a reason why we couldn't go. Too busy. Bad timing. He didn't like my brother-in-law. Whatever. This time I just booked the flight. I told Kane on a Monday that I'd be gone that Friday through Sunday. You're going to Chicago this weekend? He looked stunned. But we have the Andersons' dinner party on Saturday. The Andersons were his boss and his wife, important for his career, completely irrelevant to mine. You have the Andersons' dinner party, I corrected him. I'll be in Chicago. You can't just not go, he sputtered. Martin specifically asked if you'd be there. He wants to talk to you about their retirement planning. He has my email for that, I said. I'm sure you can explain that I had a prior commitment. A prior commitment? You just decided this? No, Kane. My sister has been asking me to visit for months. I've been putting it off for your convenience. I'm not doing that anymore. So you're just going to embarrass me in front of my boss? Make me go alone like some sad single person? You're not single, I pointed out. You're married to someone who has her own life and her own family. Sometimes those things won't align perfectly with your career networking. He stared at me like I'd suggested we start sacrificing kittens in the backyard. The idea that my needs, my relationships, might sometimes take precedence over his was completely alien to him. If you leave this weekend, he said finally, his voice low and dangerous, don't bother coming back. I looked at him for a long moment. Is that really how you want to play this, Kane? Ultimatums? It's not an ultimatum, it's a fact. If you choose your sister over me, over us, then we're done. I took a deep breath. My sister isn't a choice. She's family, just like your sister isn't a choice for you. The fact that you see my wanting to maintain my relationship with my own family as some kind of betrayal says everything about where we are right now. That's not what I meant, he backtracked slightly. Of course you can see your sister, just not this weekend. Not when it's important for us to be at this dinner. Important for you, I corrected. Not for us. Not for me. My career matters too, Gloria. I never said it didn't, but so does my family. So does my life outside of being your wife. He threw his hands up in frustration. I don't even know who you are anymore. That's the thing, Kane. I'm not sure you ever did. I went to Chicago that weekend. The entire time I was there, Kane alternated between angry texts demanding I come home immediately and wounded messages about how hurt he was that I'd abandoned him. I responded to neither. Then came the anger. One night after I got back, I was sitting on the couch watching the game and having a glass of wine, completely unbothered. He was pacing around, huffing under his breath, and I could feel the tension building. You don't even care about this marriage anymore, do you? He finally snapped. I looked up at him. I could have said a lot of things. I could have denied it, tried to soothe him like I always did. I could have pretended just to keep the peace. But I didn't. Not the way it is now, I said simply. And that's when he lost it. Not violently, but in a way that told me he finally realized he had no control left. He threw every accusation he could think of, how I was cold, how I had changed, how I was selfish and distant and different. You're not the woman I married. That one made me pause because for the first time in a long time, I looked at him and agreed. No, I'm not. That woman let you walk all over her for years. I'm done with that. His face went white. In 8 years of marriage, I had never spoken to him like that. 3 weeks after our confrontation, I was served with divorce papers at work. Classic Kane move, trying to embarrass me in front of my colleagues. I just signed for them, thanked the courier, and went back to my meeting. My boss, who had met Kane at company events and clearly never liked him, just gave me a nod of respect. I moved out that weekend, got a decent apartment closer to my office. I expected to feel devastated, but mostly I felt relieved. I started sleeping better, started smiling more. My friends noticed the change. Gloria, you seem like your old self again, my friend Dana said one night over drinks. And I realized she was right. I was becoming the woman I used to be before Kane, confident, laid back, actually enjoying my life instead of constantly worrying about measuring up. I hired a good lawyer and prepared for war. Kane had always threatened that he'd take me for everything if we ever divorced. I wasn't about to let that happen. I had documentation of my contributions to our lifestyle, records of how my income had supported his shopping habits and expensive tastes. I wasn't trying to screw him over, but I wasn't going to be screwed over either. But here's where karma stepped in. 2 months into our separation, Kane's company announced major layoffs. The luxury retail market had been hit hard by a recession, and his firm was consolidating. He was one of the first to go. His fancy marketing job with the expense account and company car, gone. A week later, I got a text from him asking if we could talk. I agreed to meet him for coffee in public, with witnesses, because I wasn't an idiot. He looked terrible. The designer clothes and perfect hair couldn't hide the dark circles under his eyes, or how thin he'd gotten. He'd always been lean, but now he looked fragile. For a moment, I felt a pang of concern. Despite everything, I had loved this man for nearly a decade. Seeing him suffer didn't bring me the satisfaction I might have expected. I've been doing some thinking, he said, stirring his latte nervously. Maybe we rushed into this divorce thing. I almost laughed. You filed Kane, not me. I was angry, he said. You changed so suddenly. I didn't know how to handle it. I didn't change, I said. I just stopped putting up with being treated like, He flinched at that. Good. I lost my job, he admitted, after a moment of uncomfortable silence. The severance isn't great, and the housing market is horrible right now. So, selling the house, and there it was. Not I miss you. Not I realize how badly I treated you. Just, I need your money. That sounds tough, I said, finishing my coffee, but it's not my problem anymore. His eyes widened. Gloria, please. I don't have anywhere to go. My parents are in Europe for the next 3 months. Emma's place is tiny. I can't afford the mortgage on my own. You should have thought about that before treating me like your personal doormat for 8 years, I said, standing up. You're smart, Kane. You'll figure it out. He actually started crying then, right there in Starbucks. The old Gloria would have caved immediately. We could try counseling, he said desperately. I'll change, I promise. I've already started talking to someone, a therapist. She's helping me understand why I behave the way I do. It's related to my childhood, to my father's expectations. Stop, I interrupted. I don't need to hear about your therapeutic breakthroughs. It's too late for that. It's never too late, he insisted, reaching for my hand across the table. I pulled it back before he could touch me. People change, Gloria. I'm changing. I can be better. We can be better together. I looked at him for a long moment. You know what? I believe you might try, for a while, until things got better for you, until you felt secure again, and then we'd be right back where we started. No, it would be different. It doesn't matter, I cut him off, because I don't want you back. Not now, not ever. His face crumpled. I think that was the first time in his life someone he wanted hadn't wanted him back. I still love you, he whispered. No, you don't, I said, not unkindly. You love what I provided. Stability, adoration, financial support. That's not the same as loving me. I walked out of that Starbucks feeling 10 feet tall. My lawyer called the next day to say Kane was suddenly open to a much more reasonable settlement. Funny how that works. The divorce was finalized 4 months later. Kane had to move out of our house. He couldn't afford to buy me out, and I had no interest in keeping a place with so many bad memories. We sold it at a slight loss due to the market, split the proceeds according to our agreement, and went our separate ways. Through mutual friends, I heard he had to move to a crappy apartment in a less desirable neighborhood. He found a new job eventually, but at a much smaller company with a significantly lower salary. His Instagram, once full of vacation photos and designer purchases tagged God blessed, went quiet. No more carefully curated images of his perfect life. No more thinly veiled brags disguised as gratitude. I'm 35 now, single, but dating again. The divorce was finalized 6 months ago. I bought a smaller house in a neighborhood I actually like, close to my friends. I set up a home office that actually feels like mine, decorated the way I wanted without Kane's constant critiques. And yes, I've started seeing someone new. His name is Aubrey. He's 36, works as a physical therapist, and has this calm, grounded presence that feels like the exact opposite of Kane's constant drama. It's early days, but it's good. Easy. In a way, things with Kane never were. Aubrey laughs at my jokes, tells me when I'm being ridiculous in a loving way, and actually listens. The first time he asked, "What do you want to do this weekend?" and waited for my answer instead of assuming, it nearly floored me. Last month, Kane texted me out of the blue. He'd heard through mutual friends that I was seeing someone new. "I hope he makes you happy," he wrote. Then, immediately after, "My lease is up next month and I'm having trouble finding a new place. Could you maybe co-sign for me, just as a favor for old times' sake?" Some people never change. I blocked his number. Sometimes I think about how close I came to spending my whole life trying to please someone who was never going to be pleased. How one overheard comment at a dinner party changed everything. It wasn't just about standing up to Kane, it was about remembering who I was. A woman with self-respect, a woman who doesn't need someone else's approval to feel worthy. And that woman, Gloria, is worth more than any marriage, house, or lifestyle. After I blocked Kane's number, the silence was blissful. For the first time in nearly a decade, my phone wasn't a weapon he could use against me. No endless text demanding, guilting, or belittling, just quiet. And in that quiet, I started to rebuild. At first, it was the little things. Sleeping diagonally across my own bed, playing music in the kitchen as loud as I wanted, leaving a pile of laundry on the chair without hearing a comment about how sloppy it made me look. Then it was the bigger things. Decorating my new house with bright colors Kane always said were too much. Booking a trip with my friends without asking anyone's permission. Taking myself to a fancy restaurant just because I felt like it. Sipping wine and smiling at the fact that the only company I needed was me. But life has a funny way of opening doors when you finally close the wrong ones. Aubrey came into the picture through mutual friends. Dana invited me to a small barbecue at her place, and he was there, her husband's cousin. I remember walking in, a little nervous because it was the first social gathering I'd gone to without Kane by my side in years. And there Aubrey was, flipping burgers at the grill, laughing with kids running around, completely at ease. When Dana introduced us, I half expected the usual polite small talk. Instead, he looked me right in the eye and said, "So you're Gloria. I've heard you make a mean sangria." I laughed, really laughed, for the first time in what felt like forever. We ended up talking the whole evening, about everything and nothing. He asked questions and actually listened to the answers. He told me about his work as a physical therapist, how much he loved helping people recover from injuries, and the satisfaction of seeing someone walk again without pain. I told him about my job, about the stress, but also the pride I took in helping clients secure their futures. There was no competition, no one-upmanship, just two people sharing space. Over the next few weeks, we started meeting up. Coffee dates, long walks at the park, a weekend morning at the farmer's market. It was slow, natural, easy. And easy felt like a miracle. One night, over dinner at a little Thai restaurant, I found myself telling him things I hadn't told anyone, not even my closest friends, about Kane, about the years of feeling small, invisible, unworthy, about the dinner party comment that shattered everything. Aubrey didn't interrupt. He didn't try to fix it. He just reached across the table, squeezed my hand, and said, "You deserved better. You still do." Something in me unclenched at that moment. It wasn't about Aubrey saving me. I'd already saved myself. But hearing someone else affirm what I'd finally started to believe made the ground beneath me feel a little more solid. Meanwhile, Kane's downfall continued to trickle back to me through mutual connections. He was struggling at his new job. His lease application had been denied twice. His Instagram remained dormant. There was a time when I would have felt guilty about that, like his struggles were somehow my fault, but not anymore. He had written the story of our marriage with his choices, and now he was living out the ending he created. I, on the other hand, was finally writing my own story. 6 months after the divorce, Aubrey and I went on a weekend trip to the mountains. Nothing extravagant, just a cozy cabin, hiking trails, and a chance to breathe fresh air. On the second day, we sat on a rock overlooking a lake, the sun setting in a blaze of pink and orange. Aubrey turned to me and said, "You know, you smile differently now." "What do you mean?" I asked, laughing a little. "It's freer, like you're not waiting for someone to take it away from you." I felt tears prick my eyes, not from sadness, but from the truth of his words. He wasn't wrong. For so long, every smile had been measured, calculated, dependent on Kane's reaction. Now it was mine, all mine. When we got back from that trip, I realized I was falling for Aubrey, not in the desperate, anxious way I had with Kane, clinging to every scrap of approval. This was steady, warm, real. I told him one night, blurting it out in the middle of a movie we weren't even watching. "I think I'm falling in love with you." He turned to me, smiled, and said, "Good, because I know I'm falling in love with you." It wasn't fireworks. It wasn't chaos. It was peace. And peace, I'd learned, was the most beautiful thing of all. Sometimes I still think about the woman I used to be, the Gloria who stayed silent, who bent until she broke, who mistook criticism for care. I don't hate her. She did what she thought she had to do to survive. But I thank God every day that I'm not her anymore. The other day, I walked past a cafe and thought I saw Kane sitting inside, staring blankly at his phone. Maybe it was him, maybe it wasn't. Either way, I kept walking. Because the truth is, I don't care anymore. His story isn't mine to carry. My story is here, with a man who sees me, respects me, and laughs with me instead of at me. My story is here, in the life I've built with my own 2 hands, free from the weight of someone else's disappointment. My story is mine now, and for the first time in my adult life, that's enough.